If you're looking for recommendations for your Fuji street and travel photography lenses, do not fear, Paul Takes Photos is here. In this episode, I'll be sharing my top 3 lenses for street and travel photography. On number 3 of my favorite lenses, it's the Fujifilm 28mm f2.8. Yes, the little pancake, the muffin, whatever you want to call it, peephole lens. This is almost always on me when I'm going out with my Fuji X-T30 Mark II. Its size is fantastic. Its downside is no aperture ring and not image stabilized. Obviously, the body is too small. But one more thing, if you're planning to use it as a hybrid lens also for video, I would not recommend it simply because you hear the cracking of the aperture blade, and I don't think the autofocus calibration here will actually support decent video when you do run and gun. But other than that, the image quality for photography is fantastic. Now the alternatives here is, the ones that I have at least, what I'm filming with is the 16mm. I seldomly use this for photography, but I use this for talking heads on my channel. I've only tried it once or twice for travel photography. I thought it was great, but a little bit too wide for my liking. A little bit more narrow, but not as narrow as the 28. Is the 23mm f2.0, oh, here we go, with an aperture ring, no image stabilization. I made a review about this lens about 2 years ago. You can see it linked in the description below. I think this is really a strange story because I used to use this every single time I went out for photography on my X-T2, and somehow over the last 2 years it became my talking head or B-roll lens. But this is a great lens. Tell me what you think about this lens, the 23mm and the 16 or even the 18, in the comments below. So with that, we go to my second lens, and this is a non-native lens. Oh yeah, it's not a Fuji lens. It is the magnificent 56mm f1.4 from a company called Sigma. Oh yeah, and this lens is, I think, one of my all-time favorite lenses because I've had it now both on the Fuji, on the Sony, on the Leica L mount. And this lens never disappoints. Yes, it doesn't come with image stabilization. It doesn't have an aperture ring. So for a purist Fuji shooter, this is definitely not what you want to have. An alternative is the Viltrox, but I compared both of them in a review. You can see it here. And yeah, I would say the Sigma is much, much better. The benefit of this Sigma, it's both excellent in low light, and it is razor sharp. You name it, everything what a street photographer or a travel photographer would want. The alternatives obviously are also Fuji native. Yeah, 56mm, you have the Mark I and Mark II. I've never shot with those because I found them simply too expensive, and I think this little baby rivals them and gives them a run for their money. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Anyways, that's number 2. Now we're almost there. But before we start to number 1, no, this is not, could you please subscribe, because it really helps me. It actually does, but I never asked for it. That was a nice bridge, wasn't it? The actual lens that I've recently purchased is the Fujifilm 90mm f2.0 weather resistant, a beast of a lens. I just made a little initial review on this here. You can watch it, and I'm not including it here for the very simple reason that I think for 2 reasons. A, I haven't used it too much. What I have used for it, great lens, awesome. But I think this is, of the focal length 135mm, it becomes a very specific shooting experience, which is not for everybody. And that aside, the price of new, close to $1,000, I think, you know, maybe this is a bit too much for many of us. I buy it because I love this kind of narrow focal length, gets me really intimate shot. Tell me if you use this lens for street and or travel photography. The other lens that I'm also using, and recently into the arsenal of Paul's photography and Fuji heaven, is the Yashica 50mm with an adapter here. And this Yashica, yes, this is a manual lens, so you're gonna have to first calibrate your camera onto this 50mm, then put on your focus peaking and switch to manual, and then it's just good old-fashioned turn that ring, hear that aperture. Oh. But I've only had this recently, and this entire combo will probably cost you $90, but it's definitely worth my initial views. It's definitely worth it because it's such a great experience actually using this lens. Be sure you buy the right adapters if you buy manual lenses, but you know, great value for money. And that brings us now to numero uno, number 1, nummer 1. Yes, it is, guess what? Oh, nearly fell off. Guess what? Which one do you think is my favorite lens, or the lens I would say always delivers, either for street and or travel photography? Which one do you think? What is that? Yeah, you're right. It is the, oh jeez, this was lame. It is the Fujifilm 18-55 kit lens f2.8 f4. This is probably single-handedly one of the best kit lenses ever made on any system. Do you agree below? Say yes or no. It also is image stabilized, it retracts nicely out, it is not too heavy, it fits on the entire line, got the aperture ring, and more importantly, the focal length 18, nice and wide, to 55, nice and narrow. I know this is again dual, but hey, you have to deal with this. This lens is perfect for videographers and photographers. This basically gets a job done from a photographer, filmmaker, or a hybrid shooter. And I think every Fujifilm photographer has one of those. But anyways, if you don't, check out the links below. And you know, one of the things I also do with street photography is I normally don't take more than one lens with me. And always on an X-T10, 20, 30, yeah? These are the cameras I really like for street photography. Also the XT version is perfect. Anyways, enough rambling. Thank you very mucho.